Hi, welcome everyone. Today we will talk about the role of intelligence testing in educational decision making. Over the past century, these assessments have been powerful tools for identifying student strengths and areas of need, guiding placement in gifted programs, special education, and interventions. However, they've also sparked ongoing debates around fairness, accuracy, and cultural sensitivity. We'll begin by examining the historical development of intelligence testing, how it started, and why it became so influential. Then we'll look at how it's applied in today's classroom and explore the scientific foundation behind the test, such as their reliability and the validity. Finally, we'll address some of the major ethical, cultural, and societal concerns. My goal is to take a critical but balanced look at how these tools can be used to promote equity and support all learners effectively. Let's dive in. Starting off with defining intelligence and intelligence testing. Before we can evaluate intelligence testing in schools, we need to understand what we mean by intelligence. Most definitions agree that intelligence involves the ability to learn from experience, solve problems, and adapt to different situations. But how can we define it? But how can we define it can vary significantly based on perspectives. For example, Charles Spearman proposed the G factor, a general intelligence underlining all cognitive abilities. Howard Gardner took a broader view with his theory of multiple intelligences, identifying at least 8 distinctive areas, like musical, bodily, kinesthetic, and interpersonal intelligence. Meanwhile, Robert Steinberg's theory divides intelligence into analytical, creative, and practical components. These differing theories shape the way intelligence is tested. Modern intelligence tests aim to measure components like verbal reasoning, working memory, fluid reasoning, and processing speed, usually resulting in an overall IQ score. However, it's important to note that these scores are not purely objective. They are influenced by how the tests are designed, the cultural context of the examinee, and how the scores are explained. As Gottfriedson 2003 and Steinberg 2020 remind us, intelligence is a complex construct, and testing it is fair from straightforward. Next, we have the historical background in intelligence testing. The roots of intelligence testing go back to the early 1900s, specifically in France. Alfred Bennett and Theodore Simon developed the first practical intelligence test in 1905. Their goal was not to label students, but rather to identify those who needed additional academic support. They emphasized practical problem solving skills over some memorization, which was a progressive approach for their time. Later, in the United States, psychologist Lewis Terman at Stanford University adapted Bennett's work into what became known as the Stanford Binet Intelligence Scales. Tierman introduced the concept of the intelligence quotient, or IQ, which transformed intelligence into a single numeric score. This made the test more standardized and scannable, and it quickly made a widely adapted tool in schools and beyond. These early intelligence tests influenced major education policies, including tracking students by ability, special education placement, and gifted programs. Modern applications in educational settings. In today's schools, intelligence testing plays a central role in shaping important educational decisions. These tests are most commonly used in 2 major areas: special education and gifted education. Some of the most frequently used assessments include the West Lessler Intelligence Scale for children 5th edition, which is the WISC-V, the Standard Bennett 5th edition, and the Kaufman Assessment Battery for Children, 2nd edition. Each of these tests provides standardized IQ scores that help educators understand a student's cognitive profile. These scores are not used in isolation. They're explained alongside academic achievement data, teacher reports, and developmental histories to determine eligibility for services under IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Key cognitive areas assessed often include verbal comprehension, visual spatial ability, fluid reasoning, and working memory. This program helps schools teams develop individual education programs or IEPs and supports differentiated instruction tailored to each student's strengths and challenges. As Kaufman 2018 and Fagan and Wise 2007 emphasized, intelligence testing, when combined with other data, can be a valuable tool to promote fair and evidence-based educational planning. Key intelligence tests, features, and usage. Now let's take a closer look at some of the most commonly used intelligence tests in educational settings and what makes each one unique. First, the WISC-V is one of the most widely used tools for children aged 6 to 16. It provides a full-scale IQ score along with 5 primary index scores that measure different cognitive abilities, such as verbal comprehension and processing speed. The Stanford Bennett 5th edition is similar in structure but can be used with a broader age range, including both children and adults. It's another staple in educational and clinical assessments. The Kaufman Assessment Battery for Children, 2nd edition, stands out because of its dual framework. It incorporates both Cattell-Horn-Carroll, the CHC theory, and neuropsychological principles, making it particularly useful for evaluating cultural and linguistic diverse students. It tries to reduce cultural bias by de-emphasizing language-heavy tasks. In addition to those, there are tools like the Differential Ability Scale, 2nd edition, and the Universal Nonverbal Intelligence Test, 2nd edition. These were specifically designed to minimize cultural and linguistic bias, which is especially important in diverse classrooms. Each of these tests has its own strengths and limitations, and it's critical to choose the most appropriate one, based on the student's background, language, proficiency, and specific educational questions being asked. Chinvez 2013 and Benson 2020. All right. Reliability of intelligence testing instruments. Reliability is one of the most important qualities of any psychological assessment. In simple terms, it refers to how consistent and dependable a test is across time, different items, and even different raters. There are a few different types of reliability to consider. Internal consistency. Reliability tells us whether the items within a test are all measuring the same underlying concept. For the WISC-V, internal consistency measured by Cronbach alpha is typically above 0.90, which is considered excellent. That means the test items are very highly incohesive. Another key type is test retest reliability, which looks at whether a person's scores remain stable over time. Both the WISC-V and the Stanford Bennett show how high test retest reliability, usually above 0.85, meaning that if a student takes the test again in a few weeks or months, their scores are likely to be very similar. This level of reliability allows educators and psychologists to feel confident that the scores are reflecting a stable and consistent pattern of cognitive ability. But it's still important to be cautious. External factors like test anxiety, lack of sleep, or poor motivation can affect a student's performance on any given day and should always be considered during interpretation. Benson 2020. Next, we have the validity of intelligence tests. While reliability tells us how consistent a test is, validity addresses a more critical question. Does the test actually measure what it claims to measure? In the case of intelligence tests, we're primarily concerned with construct validity, whether these tests truly assess the broad concept of intelligence. Research shows that intelligence tests do have good construct validity. They tend to correlate well with other established measures of intelligence and are strong predictors of academic performance, particularly in areas like reading and math. We also look at predictive validity, which refers to how well a test forecasts future outcomes. Studies like those by Deary and colleagues 2007 have shown that IQ scores are moderately to strongly associated with long-term educational achievement, job performance, and even some aspects of life success. But it's important to acknowledge the limitations. Howard Gardner 2011 characterized traditional IQ tests for focusing too narrowly on analytical skills and ignoring other concepts of intelligence, like interpersonal, musical, or bodily kinesthetic intelligence. These are valuable, especially in real world settings, but they are often overlooked by standard assessments. So, while intelligence tests can offer helpful data, they shouldn't be the only tool used to evaluate a child's ability or potential. We must use a holistic approach, incorporating other forms of assessment and input from educators and families to make balanced decisions. Ethical considerations in intelligence testing. Intelligence testing carries significant ethical responsibilities, especially when it's used to make decisions that affect a student's educational path. According to the American Psychological Association's 2017 Code of Ethics, ethical testing starts with informed consent. This means that students and their parents or guardians must understand why the test is being given, what will it measure, and how the results will be used. Psychologists and school professionals must also ensure the test is appropriate for the intended purpose. For example, a test developed for English speaking students shouldn't be used with English language learners without considering cultural and linguistic differences. Another major responsibility is test security and the fair communication of results. This includes protecting the confidentiality of the student's data and making sure results are shared in clear, understandable language rather than the technical jargon. Unfortunately, tests can be misused. Sometimes scores are used to track students permanently or to label them in limiting or in some of their ways. This can affect their access to opportunities and shape their perception and help in harmful ways. Finally, ethical assessment means we must be mindful of bias in the test itself, how it's administered, and how results are interpreted. Every student comes with a unique background, and their scores must be viewed in the context of their lived experience, not as the sole determinant of their potential. Ethical intelligent testing isn't just about following procedures, it's about honoring the dignity, diversity, and individual needs to each learner. Cultural and linguistic issues. One of the most pressuring concerns in intelligence testing is the issue of cultural and linguistic bias. Many of the most commonly used tests, like the WISC-V and Stanford Binet, were developed using normative samples that primarily reflect the dominant cultural and linguistic group in society, typically middle class, English speaking white Americans. This means that students from bilingual backgrounds, racial or ethnic minorities, or non Western cultures may be at disadvantage, not because of lower ability, but because the test content doesn't reflect their live experiences or ways of thinking. For example, verbal subtests of the WISC-V can be especially difficult for English learners. These tasks may rely on culturally specific vocabulary or idioms that don't translate across cultures. As a result, these students may score lower, even if their cognitive potential is high. This can lead to misclassification or missed opportunities for support or enrichment. To address this, psychologists and educators are increasingly using nonverbal assessments like the Unit 2, as well as culturally responsive testing practices and dynamic assessments, which focus on a student's ability to learn and grow with support. Helms, 1992, emphasized the importance of cultural, um, basically ensuring that a test measured the same construct across different cultural groups. Without this, we risk reinforcing systematic inequalities in education. As noted by Suzuki and Portoro, 2008, the goal is not to abandon intelligence testing, but to use it more thoughtfully and equitable, taking into account the cultural context of each student. We have societal and systematic implications. Intelligent testing doesn't just affect individual students, it has far reaching societal and systematic consequences. These scores often determine access to gifted programs, remedial support, and other educational resources. When these assessments are biased, misinterpreted, or used in isolation, they can unintentionally reinforce systematic inequalities. A clear example is the underrepresentation of African American and Hispanic students in gifted education programs. According to Gnarly and Ford 2003, one contributing factor is the over reliance on traditional IQ tests, which may not adequately reflect the talents and potential of students from diverse backgrounds. This means some students are being excluded from opportunities for advancement, not because they lack ability, but because the system isn't recognizing or measuring their strengths appropriately. To counter this, schools must embrace multi method and multi informant approaches, combining intelligence testing with teacher observations, achievement data, peer interviews, and even performance based assessments. As Rose 2005 argued, intelligence testing should be just one part of a broader holistic evaluation system. Only then can we move toward more equitable, inclusive, and accurate educational decision making. Best practices and recommendations. It's essential to focus on best practices for intelligence testing in education. Practices that promote fairness, accuracy, and student well being. The first key point is to use multiple sources of data. Intelligence test scores should never be the sole factor in making decisions about a student. Instead, they should be combined with academic records, classroom observations, interviews, and other culturally sensitive tools. This comprehensive approach helps ensure a more accurate and individualized understanding of each student. Another best practice is ongoing professional development. Psychologists and educators need regular training to stay current with research, understand the limitations of intelligent tests, and use them appropriately and ethically. Interdisciplinary collaboration is also vital. This means working closely with families, teachers, and specialists to ensure that decisions reflect the whole child, not just a single test score. These collaborative teams can better interpret assessments results in the context of a student's background, needs, and strengths. Finally, as emphasized by Koofman 2018 and Steinberg 2020, we must continue to support research and test development that prioritize diversity, inclusion, and validity. This means designing assessments that work well across different cultural and linguistic groups and ensuring that all students are given a fair chance to demonstrate their abilities. By following these practices, we can use intelligence testing not as a limiting tool, but as a supportive resource in guiding educational success. To conclude, it's clear that intelligence testing continues to play a powerful role in shaping educational decisions, from identifying learning needs to supporting gifted learners. These tools provide insight into cognitive functioning that can guide meaningful educational planning. But with that power comes responsibility. Intelligence tests must be used thoughtfully and ethically within a framework that acknowledges cultural diversity and individual differences. Excuse me. Testing should never be used to label or limit students. It should be used to support them. When combined with academic data, teacher input, and family collaboration, intelligence testing can inform equitable interventions and more effective instruction that truly address the needs of the whole child. As we move forward, the focus should be on building culturally competent, inclusive, and scientifically grounded assessment systems. These are essential for ensuring that intelligence testing becomes a tool that expands opportunity, not one that reinforces barriers. My references. Thank you for your time and attention on my presentation. Thank you.